Hello everyone, greetings from the SDG studio here at UN headquarters in New York. Welcome to this global policy dialogue. How close are we to gender equality? A snapshot across the SDGs. This is hosted by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, also known as UN DESA, in partnership with UN Women. My name is Shakuntala Santharan, Shaks for short, and I will be moderating today. Our focus is the absolutely critical issue of ensuring that women and girls have equal access to society's opportunities and that they're supported adequately in reaching their full potential. To figure out how to get there, we need to know where we currently stand. As our guide, we have a special report, Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Gender Snapshot. This report is full of data on SDG 5 for gender equality. It also includes lots of information on how women are faring when it comes to all 17 goals, all 17 SDGs. It's very timely to be delving into gender data now. November is when UN Women has its campaign against gender-based violence, the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Also, at the end of this month, people from around the world will gather in Dubai for the annual UN Climate Change Conference, COP28. We know that the world's most vulnerable people are experiencing the worst effects of climate change, and that includes so many women. We'll explore that issue as well today. We hope to connect to engage more people in this important conversation on how to make gender equality our reality. Before we dive in, here's some quick housekeeping. Multilingual captions are available in Zoom if you're watching us on that. Just click on the captioning icon at the bottom of your screens. Please do help us spread the word on what you hear today on social media using the hashtag Global Goals. Do join in the discussion by sending us your questions and voting up others' questions via our interactive Slido tool. We also have some audience polls for you. Just go to slido.com/global goals or go to slido.com and insert the hashtag global goals. Let's kick off with a quick poll of you, our audience. To help us get to know you a little, please share with us where you are joining us from today. Is it Africa, Asia Pacific, Europe, Latin America and the Caribbean, North America, Western Asia, or somewhere else? I'll give you a minute to vote and get familiar with Slido. Again, just go to slido.com and use the hashtag Global Goals to vote. Meanwhile, let's watch a short video from UN DESA giving us an overview of SDG progress. So as we just saw, gender equality is still some 300 years away at our current rate of progress. Clearly, a lot of work needs to be done. Let's now take a look at the results of our first audience poll. A large part, most of our audience currently joining us from Europe, followed by folks in Africa and then Asia Pacific, and Latin America and the Caribbean and North America, a similar size audience there. And some of you are in some other places. Welcome, everyone. So now that we've warmed up with Slido, here's a more challenging question for you. What do you think is the most needed tool in delivering on gender equality? Is it better planning and policies? Is it cultural change, more financing, more partnerships, or is it something else? Once again, just go to slido.com and use the hashtag Global Goals to vote. While you're voting, let me introduce our first two guests who will share with us the details of the 2023 Gender Snapshot. With me here in the studio are the co-leads of the report. Yong-Yi Min is Chief of the SDG Monitoring Section in the Statistics Division of UN DESA. And Jeanette Azcona is a Research and Data Policy Specialist at UN Women. Thank you both very much indeed for being here with us. Before we dive into our conversation, let's have a quick look together at the results of our second audience poll. So coming in tops is cultural change, followed by better planning and policies, and more financing, and something else, and more partnerships. Coming in last at the moment, as far as what you think is the most needed tool in delivering on gender equality. And none of this, there is no wrong answer here. All of this is required, and we'll delve deeper into what's needed with Yong-Yi and Jeanette. So we saw that video. At the rate we're going, it's going to take some 300 years to achieve gender equality. There is new data out, Yong-Yi. What does this data show us about where we are currently with gender equality across all the 17 SDGs? Because all these goals are linked, aren't they?
Thank you so much, Shakt. It's great to be here again. And so based on this latest SDG Gender Snapshot 2023, published joint by UN Women and UN DESA. We use the latest data and trend showing that gender equality is still a long distance away. And as you mentioned, gender equality is not only a goal in the SDG framework itself. It's the foundation for all the goals. And based on this report, we know the recent setbacks, including COVID-19, the climate change, the conflict, and push back the promises that we made in 2015 in terms of gender equalities. Just give you an example, look at SDG Goal 5. Among the 18 indicators that measure Goal 5, none of them at the level of target met or almost met level. Only 2 indicators close to meet the targets. 8 indicator is moderate distance from the target, and 4 indicators are far from the target intended. And also 4 indicators we don't have sufficient data to measure at the global level. So based on the current rate, we know that currently about 10% of women and girls living in extreme poverty, means less than $2.15 per day. And based on current rates, about 8% of women and girls will still be living in extreme poverty by 2030. That is equivalent to 340 million women and girls. And almost 1 in 4 women and girls will experience moderate and severe food insecurity. And at current rate, women in decision making and still lacking, and the progress is very slow. Only 23% of women hold a parliament position currently. And based on current rates, and by 2030, only 30% of women will hold a managerial position. And also, in the next generation, women will still spend about 2.3 hours more per day in unpaid care and household chores than men. And there's a lot of alarming data, as you mentioned. According to current rate, we're still 300 years away from achieving gender equality. The key issue is there's a lot of lack of willing activity contribution to gender equality. For example, many countries, like 53% of the country, still lack the key law to promote gender equality, which include that women have the equal right to enter marriage and initial divorce. This is a very key factor that prevents that we achieving the gender equalities, and also chronic underinvestment in gender equality in many countries.
We're going to be looking at solutions a little later in our conversation. So gender equality, or rather inequality, is in all aspects of life right now, isn't it? Including in the effects of climate change, right, Jeanette?
Exactly. I think one of the things that we are really proud of when we do this report is that we emphasize that gender is cross-cutting. And so if we're serious about solving some of the issues that we face around the world, we need to look at it from a gender perspective, and climate change is no different. This year we partnered with a university based in the US to break the silos. We are doing a lot of work on raising awareness about climate change. Oftentimes that's being done from a gender-blind perspective. And so the gender folks are working over here, the climate folks are working over here. How do we bring them together? And so for us this year, we wanted to raise awareness on how women and girls in particular are going to be impacted by the climate change crisis. We looked at 2 very specific goals. Goal 1, which we just heard about, to end poverty by 2030, and food insecurity, which of course is related to Goal 2. What does climate change mean for these goals? Are we going to achieve them by 2030 if we continue in this road of depleting our natural resources resources polluting our planet that we all depend on. And what we found from this analysis is that many more women and girls will be living in extreme poverty. That's $2.15 a day as a result of climate change.
$2.15, is that it?
Exactly, that's the extreme poverty measure. And at the current trajectory, by 2050, millions more women and girls will be pushed into poverty. So that's above and beyond what you just heard from Young-Yi. Over close to 160 million more women and girls will be living in extreme poverty, in that very low threshold of poverty. And over close to 240 will be living in food insecurity, not knowing where their next meal is going to come from, not being able to afford a healthy meal for their family, for their children. So really real implications of this climate crisis. And so in the report, we also focus on climate action, on the need to do that from a gender perspective, to understand who's going to be most impacted and how do we make sure that the policies and programs that are being put in place are focusing on these folks, are focusing on groups of women and girls who are most likely to be impacted, those in rural areas, those in poor communities, in low-income households, where their ability to mitigate these impacts, these adverse impacts are going to be much more challenging. We actually found in our analysis that a kind of gender stimulus, a gendered focused set of interventions could actually have a real impact on reducing this really bleak picture. But it will have more of an impact if we take action now, not later. If we address climate change now, not later. And so I really think it's important to raise awareness to the urgency of this matter, both the women's rights piece and the ecological rights piece, and do them in tandem.
Can't kick the bucket down the road. So this year's Gender Snapshot also has a special focus on older women, which is a group often overlooked in such studies, in such conversations. So there is some hard to come by data, isn't there, in the report? Why is it so hard to gather such data?
Yeah, no, I think it was really important for us to do an intersectional analysis of women's rights and gender equality around the world, to look at different groups of women, and older women being really important as one key group that oftentimes is overlooked. Is invisibilized. We focus on, rightly so, on young women, on adolescents, on children, but we don't stop existing after the age of 59, right? And it's really important to look at the challenges and the barriers and the contributions of older women in society. Value them, raise visibility to the issues that matter to them and to the needs of this very important group in our society. And so really important to do that, but unfortunately, oftentimes the data collection that's happening at the country level, even at the regional and global level, I would say, tends to deprioritize the information that we need to really understand some of the challenges that older women face. And so it was really important for us to not only gather the latest available evidence on older women around the world as much as we possibly could compile, and to raise awareness of the data gap, and make sure that when we're collecting data, when we're collecting information and knowledge for the betterment of society, that we're not forgetting about older women.
We're going to be exploring the challenges that older women face in more detail in our second conversation today. So, Young-Yi, it's a really grim picture overall. Are there any bright spots?
There's a quite number of bright spots, and for example, in the education area, if girls are enrolled at school, the completion rate surpasses boys in all levels of education, in primary education, in lower secondary and higher secondary education. I think, and also 2015, there's a lot of progress in terms of women's health improvement. So women and girls' access to sexual and reproductive health is gradually increasing and improving. And also the proportion of adolescents' birth rate is decreasing. So we know this is a trend, although it's not as fast as we would like to be, but it's improving. We see the positive trend in health. And in many countries, there's also very positive progress. For example, women's empowerment. In Uganda, you see like women's held more than 60% in parliament seats. Last week, I had a mission in Jordan. So we went to Jordan for this data for now initiative try to identify innovative data approach to fill some of the SDG data gaps. So while working with the Department of Statistics and also other line ministry, I noticed that there's many colleagues I work with women. So I just from curiosity, I checked the data from our database, and women in managerial position in Jordan is 57%. I was really shocked by this number because this is significantly higher than neighboring country, and then the global average is 28%. So I did deeper looking into this, and the Jordanian government and implement allow the policy and the program to empower women and to enable them in the labor force market, and also increase the women's literacy rate and more women and graduate from university. So this is the result. You can see any country, if they have the right policy, they can achieve this very high level of women in decision making, and for any countries. So this is a lot of the highlight spots that you can notify in particular country if they have the right instrument and the investment.
Is there anything you want to add, Jeanette? Was there anything you were particularly encouraged by?
I think one of the things that maybe I find really interesting about the examples that Yoongi gave is that there are, and let's not forget about this, because I think globally, kind of the average does present a negative and bleak picture, but I think that there are really amazing work happening at the country level. There are bright spots. They're few and far between, but they exist, and we have a lot to learn from them. But they also tell us that it can be done, that change can happen, that we can, envision and strive for a different future for our girls, and it just takes action. It takes, sometimes baby steps. Sometimes the progress is too slow, but it is real, and it's really great to be able to highlight some of those examples, because I think they hopefully encourage others to move in that trajectory as well.
So your research shows that $360 billion more a year are required in additional investment to get us to gender equality and women's empowerment by 2030, even if that money is forthcoming, right? Money alone is not going to do it, right? We're just talking about political will. We saw that poll just now where we were talking about better financing, better planning and policies, cultural change, more partnerships. Is one more important than the other, or is it all important, Yoongi?
It's all important. I think the report also identifies the key policy areas, not only including the investment, but also key, for example, like the policy and discrimination law is a very important. Women in any priority action to accelerate the progress and address the root cause, for example, gender-based violence, and this also need the political wills. And one thing I just want to emphasize, you feel like the 360 is a lot of investment, but if you look at the return, it's like a minimum. So for example, if you ensure that all the gender equality in employment fill the gender gap in employment, the GDP can increase by 20%. I think Jeanette also did research on GoTo. Maybe you can.
Exactly. One thing that I also wanted to maybe highlight on this is that we actually looked at different scenarios, different policy scenarios. What if we only focus on education and increase investments in education or in health or in, addressing the pay gap and addressing some of the inequality in the workforce, or expanding only social protection? And we found actually that if you do one and not the other, you don't get the impact that you need. You don't get the kinds of yields that you would get if you do a comprehensive package, right? If you address holistically the various issues that are affecting women and girls. And so really it is about, addressing not only the financial gap, but addressing the barriers when it comes to the legal framework, ensuring that women are at the seat of the table in terms of policy and decision-making about where the money goes and what goes where. But also addressing some of these other, things that we know have a devastating impact on women, and violence against women was one of the other things that Yoongi mentioned that we include in the report. So really important to look at this from a holistic perspective and to recognize that what we need is a holistic change. that does have to do with social norms, with policy changes, with financial resources being allocated and scaled up, and also sustained. I think it's really important that we talk about sustained funding, sustained political will, not a reference one year and then what's the next phase next year and we forget about gender equality and the promise that we made to women and girls. It's really about ensuring that the right amount of resources are available for programs that focus on gender equality, that the right kind of political will and attention is there for changing some of the discriminatory laws that we know exist, and doing that in a sustained manner where we know that the work is going to take time and we're there for the long haul.
So sustainable progress, as you have so rightly highlighted, is vital, and partnerships are key,
yes,
aren't they, in helping us get there. Have you any examples, ladies, that you can share with us of initiatives, of partnerships that are working?
Yeah. I can give one example, if I may. UN Women actually has a new initiative. It's called Generation Equality, and it focuses on bringing different stakeholders together. The traditional folks that we know care about gender equality and have been advocating for women's rights since the early 90s or even earlier than that, but also other stakeholders that maybe have not been as vocal, bringing in the private sector, bringing in businesses, bringing in member states, and having them all work together. Media, exactly, is another kind of new and important player in this game of changing social norms, of making sure that gender equality and what we're striving to achieve here is front and center. But it requires everybody working together, and it requires kind of a multi-pronged approach. Again, where, if you're a media actor, then you're focusing on campaigns and you're focusing on how you change social norm in the work that you do across countries. If you're in the private sector, what are you doing within your company to promote women and women's rights and kind of parity in the workforce? But also, what are you doing in terms of your business model, in terms of the work that you're doing across society to ensure that these issues are being addressed and being raised, and hopefully that we're seeing the kind of change that we want to see in the world. But it really requires everybody working together. In the report, we also talk about the role of men and boys and really bringing them to the fold. Gender equality is not only important for women and girls, it's important for all of us. And so how do we ensure that we're all allies in this fight and working together?
Can we elaborate on that point? That was going to be my next question. Gender equality benefits everyone, exactly, doesn't it? So can you spell it out for us? Why is it important? How is it going to benefit everyone? Ladies, Yeon-min, thoughts on that?
I mean, as we mentioned, that it's equal important. We don't, like, women doesn't want more. It just wants the equal right, equal access, and to resources, equal, had the same voice at the table. And we know women contribution to society is a tremendous amount, but a lot of them are uncounted, like the care work and domestic work. Although it doesn't reflect in the GDP, but it's really actually contributed to the society. So we want to the men and boys also recognize this from the beginning. This is also, we look at the poll they said about cultural change. We need to recognize this is also a great contribution, and it should be counted, like the unpaid care and work that women contribute to the society. And so this is need education from the beginning, and the cultural change and the norm change. And I really agree that everyone work together, then you will see the great improvement in many society. That if you see the country that have more equal men and women, the progress in terms of economic and social, and it's progress much faster than the country that has less gender equalities.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. Women are accelerators and multipliers. Gender equality is an accelerator and a multiplier for the kind of progress we are talking about when we talk about the SDGs. If you want to eradicate poverty, if you want to address food insecurity, if you want to have a healthier, more prosperous society, you have to involve half of your population who guess, who they are, women and girls. And so really, really important. I think the other issue is that, we don't live in isolation. Women and girls rely on their men and boys to promote these issues, and when we, promote, for example, equal pay for equal work, when we value the work that's happening at the home and encourage men and women to do it in terms of unpaid care and domestic work, we're helping society grow and prosper, right? We're making sure that the next generation and others that need care are receiving that, and that's a win for everyone. When we make sure that girls are educated in the same way as boys and have equal access to opportunities, that's a win-win. So really a win-win for everyone.
Wonderful. Let's get some audience questions now, if we could pull those up for you. So here we have a question from Marianne Broxton in Boston. When we talk about gender setbacks or goals not reached, are we also talking about LGBTQ and non-binary people? Do you want to take that, Jeanette?
We are, definitely. It's such a great question. So we actually cover all of the goals, as we said. And so under goal 10 this year, we actually wanted to raise visibility on this particular issue. The fact that in many countries, we still have discriminatory laws that prevent, for example, people from being able to marry if they're from the same sex, that discriminate in other ways. And so raising awareness, and not only on this issue, but on other issues. Disability, for example, status is another variable when we talk about intersectionality and the different forms of discrimination that women experience, often compounding the already, inequality they face just simply from being a woman. And so really important to raise awareness on all of this. Of course, the SDGs talk about leaving no one behind, and it's important that these kinds of data are available so that we can raise awareness on the kinds of issues that different groups in society are facing. Oftentimes that data isn't collected, isn't available. And so because the report is a global report, we are focused on trying to collect as much data as possible to tell an overview of what's happening across the world. When that data isn't available at the country level, it makes it harder. Not impossible, and again, where we do have the data, we use it and we include it in the report, but couldn't agree more. When we're talking about the SDGs, it's really about progress across all of the goals for everyone, all women and girls and all their diversity. And all those, non-binary, et cetera, for sure.
Thank you, Jeanette. So here we have another question from Kamlesh K. Srivastava in Gwalior in India. In developing and other countries, there is no provision for maternity leave and other benefits to women. What do we do? Is that another question for you, Jeanette? Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Yoongi, on this maternity?
Yes, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
The first thing is the legal framework. In many countries, this is you need to set up a legal framework to ensure the maternity leave and other benefit of women is written in the labor laws, and to give the women and this right to have this, and also social protection system, and to give the maternity leave and benefits to women. And this is need to be fixed in the policy and legal framework of many of the countries.
Mm-hmm, exactly. No, I think, and it's really a symptom of a bigger problem, right? The inequality that we see in the home, the inequality that we see in terms of, what folks consider to be women's work and men's work has implications for what we see outside of the home in terms of the kinds of laws that are in place, the kinds of protections that are in place in the workforce. And the gaps in these kinds of social benefits are really indicative of a broader and more systemic issue of gender equality being pervasive across all aspects of our life, and really needing to tackle them in all areas, including in health.
We're going to squeeze in one more question here. Is AI guaranteed to perpetuate or worsen existing gender inequities? A great question here. Philippa Biggs from Geneva in Switzerland. Ladies, what do you think? Very quickly.
I can say what I think.
Ahead,
this is such a great question. It's $1 million question. And so if someone has a really robust answer to it, let me know, because I also want to know. It's actually one of the things that Yoongi and I have been talking about as the next core area that we want to tackle for the next issue of the report. The report comes out every year in September. So stay tuned for what we're going to say about this in 2024. But I will say, and I know that some people may disagree, I think that there is potential here for opportunities and to do good. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of danger. And that is what we tend to focus on, rightly so. We need to make sure that any new technology does no harm. That is a core principle of the work that we do here. And I think it has to be applied to every single data producer, technology company, et cetera, making sure that what you're doing is it's hopefully contributing to progress, but at the very least not doing any harm. And so more regulations, more research on the implications of this new technology is needed, including from a gender perspective. But I think it's also important to think about what potential good could come out of this, because I think that that's also a valid question.
Because there is huge potential for
Exactly.
good with responsible development and usage, right? Yongi, do you want to add quickly?
Yeah, I'm just saying, I totally agree with Jenna said. Basically, you keep the risk in mind and look at where the gender bias, the technology gender bias can occur, and try to prevent from the beginning. For example, you can educate women and girls more in the new technologies and the new development, the AI, and so they can be more empowered and not so impacted by this new technology. And also look at the areas of the work. Probably some of the area work are probably more impacted by this new AIs, but then look into the systematic issue and try to prepare women and girls and for the next generation of technology development.
Can I say one more thing on that? And we included under Goal 9 in the report is that women need to be at the table again in terms of how this technology is evolving, making sure that women are in these fields in science, technology, innovation, computing, et cetera, making sure that they're part of it so that the technology is not promoting or perpetuating gender biases, and really making sure that we're looking at the potential risk also from an intersectional perspective. That's also really key.
Wonderful, ladies. Thank you so very much, Yongi. And Jeanette, you've given us a lot to think about. Thank you for those vital insights into the Gender Snapshot and beyond. And now we have another audience poll for you. The question this time is, what do you think is the greatest contribution of older women in our society? Is it caregiving? Is it cultivating social ties, sharing wisdom, undertaking volunteer work, or is it something else? Again, please go to slido.com and use the hashtag Global Goals to vote. While you're voting, here's a video from UN Women on making women count. As we saw in that video, as we heard from Yongyi and Jeanette, better data is so very important to inform sound decision making. And here to making sure that all women and girls are counted and valued. So now let's see how you voted in our last audience poll. Let's pull up those results for you. We have caregiving coming in at 32%, cultivating social ties, following that closely, and sharing wisdom, both coming in at 29%, undertaking volunteer work and something else coming in last as for what you think is the greatest contribution of older women to society. Again, there are no wrong answers here. These are some of the many, many ways that older women contribute to society. Thank you all very much for voting. And that brings us neatly to our next conversation on leaving no older woman behind. Societies are aging globally, and since women outlive men by an average of 5.2 years, they form a greater share of the globe's older population. In 2023, 55.7% of people aged 65 and above are women. Joining us now virtually is Yumiko Kamiya, Population Affairs Officer of the Population Division of DESA. She joins us from New York. Carol Agengo is Global Initiatives Lead and Regional Representative for Africa of the nonprofit organization Help Age International. She joins us from Nairobi in Kenya. Thank you both and welcome. So, Yumi, you are one of the main authors of the World Social Report 2023, which is about economic and social implications of the world's aging population. What does your research show about how gender inequality affects older women?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address the crucial issues on how inequality affect women at older age. As we delve into this complex topic, it becomes evident that older persons, older women, face compound challenges due to the persistent inequalities throughout their lives. So as you said, let's start with very brief demographic overview. Women live longer on average and constitute a majority of the older population. In 2021, women outlive men by 5.4 years, comprising 56% of the global population, aged 65 or over, and 62% among those aged 80 or over. Despite living longer, older women experience a high prevalence of morbidity and disability compared to men. Men are more likely to die from cancer, cardiovascular disease, and other ailments associated with the exposure to lifestyle risks, particularly after age 65. Women often experience high rates of chronic conditions, such as arthritis, osteoporosis, and depression, which may be debilitating and diminish the quality of life, but are less likely to result in death. So if you see the disparity in life expectancy at age 60 and health expectancy, the gap between life expectancy and health life expectancy has widened over the years, particularly for women, indicating a rise in years lived with health challenges. By 2019, in compared to 2000, the gap has increased to 4.7 years for men and 6 years for women, which means that older women, live 6 years of their life in the ill health. Women may face higher health costs in old age, partially due to the long life expectancy and the fact that older women live longer than men, potentially needing for long-term care. These additional expenses can strain retirement saving. We know also from the data from the United Nations Household and Living Arrangement Database, which has a data for 98% of the older population, that older women are twice or more likely to live alone than men, while the other men live with their spouse, which that has a huge implication in terms of the provision of the care. In terms of the economic insecurity, women's over the life course of the lower labor participation, shorter working lives, the competing demands of taking care of the family, raising the children, and the lower wage leads to economic insecurity in later life. Longer life expectancy contributes to the high rate of the widowhood, less remarriage, and increased likelihood, as I said before, of living alone, exacerbating the economic vulnerability, especially beyond the age 80s. Looking for the pension disparities, we know that the pension gaps between men and women exceed the gender pay gaps, influenced by the women's low-paying jobs and shorter working career due to the caring responsibilities. Women face a high likelihood of not receiving pension, and when they do, the benefits levels are often lower due to the labor market discrimination, gender-biased pension schemes, and great share of family responsibilities. Addressing these issues is critical for gender equality in pension provision. We see some of the positive examples for a growing number of countries in Europe that offer caregiver credits for public tax-funded pension, acknowledging the impact of unequal distribution of the care and domestic work. In terms of the poverty, we know that in developed countries, relative poverty among older persons is driven by the higher poverty rates among older men. In developing countries, show consistent high relative poverty among women in general compared to the men across in other wage. So we must address the root cause of the gender inequality across the life course.
Okay.
This involving implementing policy, as was addressed before in the first panel,
Yes.
to promote equal access to education, job opportunities, and healthcare.
Yumi, thank you very much for giving us that big overview. We're going to look at solutions after this. Carol, your organization aims to empower older people, helping older people live better lives, especially in crisis-prone and insecure areas. What do you see in your work? How does gender inequality affect older women, the women you work with?
Thank you, Sak. One of the things that I'd like to highlight, we work for the well-being, dignity, and health for older people so that they can live a life of non-discrimination. In humanitarian situations, we see can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In humanitarian situations, we see the consequence of lifelong discrimination, gendered ageism, the lack of access to employment, a lot of which has been raised by the other speakers on the other panel, and even a few minutes ago. We see that the life course discrimination of young girls where they do not get education, issues that are instigated by culture come into full play in later years. And it becomes very, very difficult to then correct some of those challenges. We also see that older women are pushed to the periphery. I think Jeanette talked about 59 as the age where reproductive health stops. No, it stops at 49. At the age of 50 and above, there is even no attention whatsoever to the reproductive health needs of women directly, or even the indirect support that they give. We've seen about caregiving being the highest contribution that older women make. And we see that playing out in humanitarian situations where the younger people, both men and women, are able to move out. Older women, especially because of mobility, are not able to move out of precarious situations. And even if they were able to, their caregiving role is such that they are expected to stay behind and take care of smaller children or even take care of the property. If it's in a pastoralist situation, they take care of the animals. So that exclusion plays out, and we see it in development because older women are not counted. We see them excluded in the data for health, for income, for the 17 goals. If we were to go down one by one, we'll see a very, very loud absence of older women.
Yes, this big data gap, like you pointed out. And another big issue, Carol, is the issue of elder abuse, isn't it? That's often ignored, overlooked again. How does this abuse, this violence show up for older women?
It shows up in various forms. The first one is that it has been accepted in society. So even the older women internalize it and take it as something that is normal. So they do not report it, and therefore there is no progress made in addressing it. But it plays out. We see it in what do you call it? Taking the property of older women. That plays out in a lot of African societies in Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, where older women are burned and accused of being witches and then burned alive, so that then communities have access to their properties. But that doesn't happen where they're not poor or where there are male relatives who are able to protect them. So we see the gender discrimination, gendered ageism, the exclusion that started when these older women were young, now playing out fully in older years. I don't know whether you want me to go deeper and give examples of what happens.
Yes, please do. Give us an example, because is this very common where older women are accused of witchcraft, basically as a means to grab their property, right?
In places like Kisii in Kenya, a community called Kisii, and in Kilifi in Kenya, it is totally widespread, and the government and the society seems totally unable to address it. So poor older women who have some little amount of property and do not have male relatives are often attacked, because this doesn't play out where the woman has male relatives who've gone to school and who protect them. They target the most vulnerable in society. And a lot of this is linked to land. Land is a very valuable resource in Africa. And so that is what gets the older women targeted. In places like Ghana, where they're slightly kinder in quotes, they take the older women from their homes and take them to a village in the north of the country. So there's a witch village in the north of the country where older women are taken. In other places like Malawi, we've seen older women being burned alive because they are accused of witchcraft, because they have wrinkles, they have bones that are deformed, or red eyes. So it's a big problem.
We're going to look at what your organization is doing to address these issues, Carol. But first, Yumi, what are some policy solutions that will help older women thrive?
Well, I think that first and foremost, we must address the root cause of gender inequality across the life course. That's involving implementing policies that promote equal access to education, job opportunities, and healthcare from early childhood through the retirement age. So addressing inequality at older age, as has been said in the first panel too, require a holistic approach that considers economic, health, and social dimensions. Just for a matter of the time, I also want to cite some of the very good successful countries that has been addressing the inequality for the older person, especially one of the countries is Brazil, has a social safety net programs and the poverty reduction programs. And as a consequence, the relative poverty among the older persons is one of the lowest. And this is a kind of the holistic programs that also involve a non-contributory pension scheme, a cash transfer programs for the household with the older persons or a household with a person with disability, and a universal health care system, a universal health system. So that is an approach that Brazil is one of the cases that has been very successful in reducing the inequality of the older men and older women.
And Carol, what are some initiatives that your organization is recommending that can help move the needle in the right direction as far as gender equality goes?
One, we must embrace an intersectional approach, because the issue of aging does not happen in a vacuum. I've said this until it's a little stale now, but aging is the only thing everybody's doing. It's a cool thing to do. But we address aging as if it's a very, very unique thing only meant for older people. So we must look at aging from an intersectional approach, address the older people of today and the older people of the future. We must also embrace an intergenerational approach, drawing from what I've just said, because the older people today, younger people today are older people in waiting. They will grow old. So it's in our best interest to bring them in so that they begin to address some of the structural issues we've spoken about. Then the third thing is that we must address embrace a life course approach, because the issues that affect older women today started from the day they were born. The gender discrimination, the inequalities, the exclusion have all been entrenched through systematic ways from along the life course. And so we must embrace a life course approach to addressing the issues that are affecting older women.
Okay, and very quickly, I wanted to look at some audience questions. But Carol, how are you addressing this gender violence in the countries you work in?
One of the ways, I'll speak about the burning of witches. We are embracing a legal, social, economic, we've embraced an approach that addresses the legal consequences, because if you kill somebody in Kenya, it's murder, it's a crime. So why is it okay to kill an older woman? Because the social norms have allowed it. So we're addressing the legal. We have cases in court right now, but we're also working with communities to address the social norms that are driving this scourge. And we're using the same in Malawi, in Ghana, through our network members. The second approach that we are using is advocacy for income security and healthy aging, because if we address some of these issues, then we will, the domino effect is that the violence that is occasioned to women will be reduced, because then they will be stronger, they will have income to be able to stand against some of the violations that they see. So I would say legal and social as well as economic.
Let's look at an audience question now, and we can pull that up for you. So what is the involvement of Indigenous women in the gender or in a gender equity program? This is from Sindizera Severin in Bujumbura, Burundi. Would you like to take that, Carol?
Yes. When we work with older women, we work with communities. When I spoke about intersectionality, then we embrace the full diversity of older women, because older women are not homogeneous. We embrace their full diversity, but even with the intersectional spaces that we work in, we work with the full range of diversities. So we work with indigenous people, that we work in Latin America. We've seen that also in Africa, where we're working with traditional communities through the older people's associations that then embrace the localized context of the various people that we work with. So I'll be happy to, if Severin could reach out. We are actually making inroads into Burundi, and I'll be happy to engage with her some more.
Thank you very much indeed, Carol. I think we have to leave it there. There's so much more to talk about. Thank you, ladies, both very much indeed. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Yumi, for your most insightful contributions to this crucial conversation. So as we heard, gender inequality still exists in all aspects of life, from pay gaps to food insecurity, gender-based violence, even in the effects of climate change. Older women, as we heard, face unique and compounded challenges. So it's important to keep working towards the goals, towards gender equality. Some progress is better than no progress at all. Partnerships are key, and there is hope. We heard some specific examples of what is working, effective action that can be, must be scaled up. Many thanks once again to all our guests for answering our questions, and thanks to you, our audience, for your participation. I certainly learned a lot listening to all our speakers today, and I hope you did too. If you're watching us on Zoom, you'll see an exit survey pop up when you leave the meeting. Please do fill it out. We would really appreciate your feedback, as it helps us plan for future events for you. DESA will continue its Global Policy Dialogue series in the coming months, including at its SDG Pavilion at COP28 starting on November 30th. Please bookmark un.org/DESA to find out about that. And if you're interested in exploring this gender data in more depth, the Gender Snapshot 2023 is now available. You'll find that also at un.org/DESA. Thank you once again for tuning in, and thanks to our colleagues at DESA and the Department of Global Communications. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night from me and the team here in New York. Goodbye.